Are you ready to go?
Yeah, go for it, brother.
Okay, God willing. I seek refuge in God, away from Satan and rejected. The livestock provide you with many benefits for a period before being donated to the ancient shrine. For each congregation, we have decreed rites whereby they commemorate the name of God for providing them with the livestock. Your God is one and the same God. You shall all submit to him. Give good news to the obedient. They are the ones whose hearts tremble upon mentioning God. They steadfastly persevere during adversity. They observe the contact Paris law, and from our provisions to them they give to charity. The animal offerings are among the rites decreed by God for your own good. You shall mention God's name on them while they are standing in line. Once they are offered for sacrifice, you shall eat therefrom and feed the poor and the needy. This is why we subdued them for you, that you may show your appreciation. Neither their meat nor their blood reaches God. What reaches him is your righteousness. He has subdued them for you, that you may show your appreciation by glorifying God for guiding you. Give good news to the charitable. God defends those who believe. God does not love any betrayer unappreciative. Permission is granted to those who are being persecuted, since injustice has befallen them, and God is certainly able to support them. They were evicted from their homes unjustly for no reason other than saying, "Our Lord is God." If it were not for God's supporting of some people against others, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids, where the name of God is commemorated frequently, would have been destroyed. Absolutely, God supports those who support him. God is powerful, almighty. They are those who, if we appointed them as rulers on earth, they would establish the contact prayer Salat and the obligatory charity zakat, and would advocate righteousness and forbid evil. God is the ultimate ruler. If they reject you, the people of Noah, Ad, and Thamud have also disbelieved before them. Also the people of Abraham and the people of Lot, and the dwellers of Midian. Moses was also rejected. I led all those people on. Then I called them to account. How devastating was my requital. Many a community we annihilated because of their wickedness. They ended up with ruins, stilled wells, and great empty mansions. Did they not roam the earth? Then use their minds to understand and use their ears to hear. Indeed, the real blindness is not the blindness of the eyes, but the blindness of the hearts inside the chests. They challenge you to bring retribution, and God never fails to fulfill his prophecy. A day of your Lord is like 1,000 of your years. Many a community in the past committed evil. I led them on for a while. When I punished them, to me is the ultimate destiny. That's it. Praise God.
Justin, do you want to start off with any commentary or questions from those verses?
Let me just, because it is quite dense. There was quite a lot going on. 2234 is the verse that we often use to exemplify the fact that God has given different rights to each community, right? We, as a community, God has guided us towards the Quran and the rights of Abraham, right? But of course, rights were given to other communities, such as Jesus with the gospel, and Moses with the statute book, right? The Torah. So just a very important verse, especially for when there's a debate going on, saying like, "Oh, can Jews and Christians be submitters as well?" Well, yes, they submit to the rules given to them, right? That would be one comment, right?
Beautiful comment. Does anyone else want to comment on the verses, thoughts, questions?
I have to add something, right? I've kind of like something I've been thinking about, like before we even reach this chapter, right? Wait, did someone flip the page?
It should be on the UI. You should be able to go back and forth. Just because if it gets beyond a
Oh,
certain number of
oh yeah,
characters, it goes to multiple pages.
oh yeah. So it's 22, 37. Neither their meat nor their blood reaches God. What reaches him is your righteousness. He has subdued them for you, that you may show your appreciation by glorifying God for guiding you. Give good news to the charitable. So this actually kind of like reminds me of something that the Muslims nowadays do, is that they don't consider some of like the animals fit for sacrifice. If this animal had, it was like limping, or it was like sick or something like that, this verse like destroys it, because it says neither their meat nor their blood reaches God. So it's like this body of the animal doesn't even matter to God, because that's not what reaches him. What reaches him is your righteousness, and just the act of like sacrificing God. And when you kind of think about it, like the Muslims do the exact same thing that God, it's like the story of like the heifer, right? It's like these guys kept asking Moses for more and more instructions, making the task harder for them, and excluding more animals from being fit for sacrifice, which look like the Muslims are doing just that by acting, more pious, and wanting to sacrifice a fully, like a fat sheep, or any kind of animal. So this is not like an instruction in the Quran, as the verse says. Uh, 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 Neither their meat nor their blood reaches God. What reaches him is your righteousness.
Praise God. I wanted to share something regarding 2233. It says the livestock provide you with many benefits for a period before being donated to the ancient shrine. You see this theme throughout the Quran, where God is constantly reminding us to be appreciative for the livestock. And there's a book years ago. It's called Guns, Germs, and Steel. And one of the premises of the book was to try to understand why certain regions were able to advance and other ones, didn't seem to have the level of advancement. And one of the things that they tied it to was the location of where these livestock originated. So I'm sharing an image, and what you see is that the vast majority of the livestock reside in this Fertile Crescent, right, the Middle East. And if you look at, like, say, North America, South America, I think they only have like the alpaca in South America. I can't even tell what image that is. It looks like a bird in North America, right? The turkey. There you go. They got the turkey. But you can't exactly use the turkey for a transportation or for a loading. But if you look at the camel, the cattle, the sheep, the oxen, right? Like all these stuff come in the Middle East, and we don't understand that because of this advantage. You have civilization starting in those areas. Got a, got a hot mic. Moot, brother. Moot, you got a hot mic, brother. God bless. Yeah, so it's one of these things that we just take for granted, and we don't realize, like, we think we drive in cars and ships and boats and planes, but in order to even get to that stage, right, you needed to have the form of transportation and also nutrition that livestock provide. Like, imagine trying to do a long distance journey prior to all that if you're only limited to what you can carry on foot on your foot. That's all. Anyone else want to comment, chime in?
peace. One that is sticking out to me is I see perfectly God from Satan rejected. Permission is granted to those who are being persecuted, that injustice has befallen them, and God is certainly able to support them. Verse 39. I was on here yesterday talking about how I've heard recently that there, of course, are opinions that people, that us submitters, when there is somebody in the group that is causing a lot of chaos and strife and saying nasty things, and like we just have to sit there and deal with it. Like we can't, like more or less, we're not allowed to defend ourselves or to be intolerant of that behavior. And it just, I don't agree with that. And God, throughout the Quran, like forgiveness and tolerance, that it's considered a charity, but that's up to the individual that's suffering the bad behavior, and we can't hold ourselves to the standard like we're better if we've decided to keep quiet. We have to have tolerance for those who decide that they have suffered an injustice and that they want to defend themselves and their rights.
I have a verse that comes to mind, 497. It's actually, this is a way that you can keep someone locked into oppression, is you say that, hey, you're not permitted to emigrate, to leave, to move. You have to just tolerate the constant persecution. And if you read 497, it says, those whose lives are terminated by the angels while in a state of wronging their souls, the angels will ask them, what was the matter with you? They will say, we were oppressed on earth. They will say, was God's earth not spacious enough for you to emigrate therein? For these, the final abode is hell and a miserable destiny. Meaning God is the simplest command is, if we're being persecuted or we can't worship our religion freely, is that we get up and move. The last resort is that you fight. And God says that those who emigrate in his cause, that they'll find great bounties and richness if they mobilize in the cause of God. Now, what's interesting too is if you read the next verse, in 22:39, permission is granted to those who are being persecuted, since injustice has befallen them, and God is certainly able to support them. And says they were evicted from their homes unjustly for no reason other than saying our Lord is God. If we're not for God's supporting of some people against others, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids, where the name of God is commemorated frequently, would have been destroyed. Absolutely, God supports those who support him. God is powerful, almighty. And we see this on a small scale here on Discord, right, where we had a server and we were driven out because some people basically decided to be tyrants. And then they accused the ones who were kicked out to say, oh, you're dividing the believers and this and that, when in actuality they're the ones who started the whole ordeal. I just think it's a kind of telling how even the more mundane situation, we can still pull lessons from these extreme examples.
Yeah, and it is extreme. Like to, I think, we should strive for peace, but I think some people take that out of context sometimes, and come up with these opinions that keep people oppressed and that keep people victimized. And I think that is an extreme that Satan is also pushing for, because of course we know he loves to victimize the submitters, or anybody really for that matter.
Peace. I'd like
Peaceful.
to, I'd like to turn our attention to Surah 26. verse 227. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Exempted are those who believe, lead a righteous life, commemorate God frequently, and stand up for their rights. Surely the transgressors will find out what their ultimate destiny is. This verse clearly points out that people who believe it's not an option. They should, if situation demands it, stand up for their rights. Standing up for one's rights also means holding fast to the worship of God, the Quran, and what is we know God has revealed the appropriate behavior for a submitter. And the second part, the last part of the verse, surely the transgressors, right? Anyone who attacks, abuses, mocks, tries to destroy the properties of believers and what have you, God says the transgressors will find out. So we must stand up for our rights. We must stand up for the truth. This goes against and contrary to the notion of being sedentary or still, being hesitant, being unmotivated to move forward with righteousness. Thank you. Peace.
Salam alaikum. I
Peace.
thought it was I thought it was interesting. Like we talked about time the other day, and the verse that we just read. Hold on, I have a hard time seeing it on Discord, so I'm hoping I'm on the right verses. uh, Hold on. Where is it?
I can load them again.
Oh yeah. We're on 22, right? Surah
Yeah,
22.
22, 33 through 48.
Okay, so this Surah 22:47. I know I'm moving down a little bit. Maybe people have other things to say, but the challenge they challenge you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi a'udhu bika min hamasati shayateen. A'udhu bika rabbi an yaqtulun. They challenge you to bring retribution, and God never fails to fulfill his prophecy. A day for your Lord is like 1,000 of your years. It just dawned on me how I'm like, oh, 1,000 years. No, that's nothing. But if you think about it, 1,000 years, like how much has happened in the human existence for 1,000 years? Like, you know what I mean? Events that we still talk about, 1,400 years, and if you can add like another 400, that's when Muhammad brought the Quran. And so for us, for God, like one day is 1,000 of our years. It's just like, to me, I don't know, it just struck me as like I just read it and I keep moving on. But then I was like, wow, like there's a lot going on in the human existence over those years. It changes, inventions, like we then we fly and we have all these kind of things going on, but it's just one day for God. That's all. That's all I wanted to kind of say, to kind of contemplate on, like, that is pretty amazing, pretty intense.
There's
Just FYI, just a footnote. Like,
Yeah, it shows that there's a time dilation between the domain of God and our domain.
yeah. I just felt like it's like, um, it's kind of intense, if you think about it, because there's a lot of things that happens. Not only we don't even in our own lives, like, in my life, like there's been so many events, like historical events, and that I'm taking seriously, and I'm like all deep into. But that is just a day for God, you know.
Can this be like
Less
a
than a second.
Can this be like a sign about how big our universe actually is when it comes to like years? Because I know, like, if you go to certain planets, like the days are different. Days are shorter, some are longer, or whatnot. I'm not very good with all that, but I do know, like, if
Yeah.
you go to other planets, it changes, like the schedule changes on days and nights, and so like a day of our Lord is like 1,000 of our years. So is that because he's just so far away that that's on the time frame, I guess?
It can be, but you think, but then you look at just Earth, like animals, for example, like a fly sees us coming because we think we're moving fast, but the fly thinks we're super slow, like in slow motion. So if you ever seen that, like like that when they show how a fly sees what we're doing, like why can't I swat a fly on time? And I'm fast, but according to the fly, you taking super long to do it, and that fly maybe only have I don't know how many. Maybe it has 2 days to live or something or less. You know what I mean? So that is I don't know what a turtle sees. Maybe he lives 250 years or 150 years. I forgot how long. I mean, they can live for a very long time. Maybe their time is slower. Like elephants' time could be slower than ours. So it seems like even in our on our small little planet, there's a difference on how creatures see time. Experience time. Is it in? Is in within?
Yeah,
Is within the same time frame, but it's kind of different perceptions of time.
Yeah, I mean, we can read in it a multitude of ways, right? This concept of, say, for instance, like a fly. I don't think it's so much the age of the fly as opposed to its frame rate of how it visualizes the world. If I'm not mistaken, like human beings, we see it 60 hertz per second, meaning that if the frame rate is slower than that, we detect glitches. But if it's faster than that, it's not noticeable. But a fly
But
can
it
actually
seems
see
like
it
it has to do
faster.
with the timeline of like how long that creature is meant to live. How long that?
Yeah, that's. I mean, its reaction speed is different than its life expectancy, but and then same thing for like the planets is just the days just depend on the how fast it revolves. But in this verse, I mean, we could either understand it that it's just saying that God has a different time domain than we do, and if you think of it in the sense of like a relativity, there's actually calculations you can put into that to say, okay, what would be the speed and size of an object um, uh, based on these parameters? But I don't think that that's necessarily what the verse is saying. Another thing that I can't remember was Brandy or Anna, you mentioned, but it's this concept where if you take, say, for instance, 1 hour, okay, and we expand that out, or let's use this example, one day, and we expand that out into cross sections that could encompass 1,000 years, right? Another way of thinking about it is just the level of resolution that God is putting into this world. But it's one of these things. It's open ended. There's definitely wisdom in it. But yeah, if anyone else has thoughts or whatnot regarding this is 2247. I'll put in
I'm just
the
thinking from the perspective of perception, like what we perceive as like so a long time, and you know what I mean. Yeah, I'm finished.
One way I see it that you couldn't interpret it is time is only slow when it hasn't passed, right? Once that knowledge is acquired, like I think the older people here can attest that time is very fast, right? Once the knowledge has come, once the moment has passed, it took no time at all, right? And God being the omniscient, right? He knows all things and what is to come to pass. So even though we aren't steadfast and the time seems very slow because we always look to the future. Realistically, it's no time at all, and it's clear that we even come to that perspective after our lives here, because people question how long did we last? A day, part of a day, right? It's our perspective changes once it passes.
Yeah, peace be upon you. I think there is a calculation correlated to the time dilation. That this refers to the speed of light, basically. We have the ours, you can do a calculation which demonstrates the difference. It's like you have a moon revolves around the Earth, and it has to revolve at a certain speed, a certain number of times that you will have 1,000 years. But if you were to change that speed to the speed of light, then it would actually take 1 day to revolve the same amount of distance or same amount of time of revolution around the Earth. It would take 1 day to do it if you speed up the moon to the speed of light. So there is a correlation of speed between what's actually we experience, because obviously the moon is not going around the Earth at the speed of light. It's going at a different speed. It takes a certain amount of time. It takes 1,000 years almost to go around that. And then what if you speed it up to the speed of light? It will take only 1 day, 24 hours or 23 hours or something. This is a calculation that I saw somebody done, and I have a copy of it. Someone wants to see it. So it shows this relativity between the our experience of time at our world, and if you were at the speed of light, they would obviously experience it differently.
Peace. I'm referring to Surah 16, verse 77. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. The subtitle is "This Life is Very Short. To God belongs the future of the heavens and the earth. As far as he is concerned, the end of the world, the end of the world, in parenthesis, the hour, is a blink of an eye away or even closer. God is omnipotent." So time as we experience it is nothing, quote unquote, okay, compared to eternity. We can't even comprehend literally eternity. So the lesson, or one of the lessons we can draw from this, is that in the very first sentence of this verse, to God belongs the future of the heavens and the earth. And also another verse in the Quran says, to God belongs the past, present, and future. So we should not be like disbelievers and quote unquote waste our time in this world during our lifespan, so that we can be redeemed back to the presence of God. Peace.
I wanted to make a comment regarding, let me double check the verse. I think it was 2240. I'm going to put it in the chat so we can, oh, actually I put the Arabic too. This says, they were evicted from their homes unjustly for no reason other than saying, our Lord is God. If we're not for God supporting some people against others. And then here, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids, where the name of God is commemorated frequently, would have been destroyed. Absolutely, God supports those who support him. God is powerful, almighty. Among Quranist circles, predominantly start from guys like Adib, they twisted this verse to have it be referencing other than this what's being stated here. I'm going to put their translation. So this is from a deep, and then another one, the monotheist group. And they say rather than monasteries, churches, and synagogues, they put places of gathering, markets, support centers, and temples. And then they say places of gathering, markets, and contact prayers and temples. And this is really, it's kind of a nonsensical translation of this verse. And I'm going to put an article showing kind of the root of each of these words, that they do correspond to monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids. For anyone who's interested, I think it might be a little too, what do you call it, time consuming to go over each one. But I have all the lexicons there showing kind of how these are corresponding to these four as specified by Rashad in his translation. That's all.
I am.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if anyone had anything they wanted to chime in on.
Okay, it sounded like Brother Douglas or somebody was going to say something. One that's popping out to me is verse 48. Many a community in the past committed evil, and I led them on for a while. Then I punished them. To me, is the ultimate destiny. So there was a discussion yesterday, and this was one that had came to mind on the topic that we were discussing, and it's about law of attraction, and that like more or less we can incorporate some of these practices in our life and not commit idol worship. So law of attraction, the way it's taught is you change the way you think. Like you go from being negative thinking to positive thinking, and that like you have to be in this like persistent state of appreciation, and but that if you do this, that you can change your reality. You can be like godlike and be in control of your circumstances and the things that you attract into your life. And there's a lot of scientific evidence that backs this up as well. But to me, in some sense, like I think the practice of like practicing appreciation and attributing that to God, I think is, you can never go wrong there. But it just seems to me like, Satan, he will take some truth and add it in with like, bad practices or something that's not good, and makes it like maybe something that could be bad more subtle. Or if you want to dive into a certain thing that, you can just kind of like brush away things that maybe are bad about it and highlight what's good about it, so you can feel comfortable going into that direction. But like what came to mind was and I brought up was how, like, is this really something that a submitter should weigh doing, or that they should do? Because we do know that like the way God has set this up is God gives us more or less what we want. Like he'll lead us on in the direction that we choose, which kind of sounds like law of attraction to some degree.
I mean, these principles, and if it's used for good, it's one thing, but then the devil's always going to try to flip it, right? So imagine something like exercise. Okay, exercise is good for you, but if you think that, oh, it's my exercise that's giving me this good health, and I'm so much better than other people, and blah blah blah, then the person has taken something good and used it to draw them further away from God. Um, this applies to all the blessings that God gives us. Um, if we use them wisely to draw closer to God, it's going to be good. If we use them negatively to draw further away from God, then it's going to be for our own detriment.
Yeah, and then we didn't go over these verses, but I just wanted to jump up ahead a couple verses, God willing. Like he thus sets up the devil's schemes as a test for those who harbor doubts in their hearts, and those whose hearts are hardened, the wicked must remain with opposition. Those who are blessed with knowledge will recognize the truth from their Lord, then believe in it, so on and so forth. What was I gonna say? Yeah, it just and it's been something that has been like on my mind on and off since I came to submission, because before I come to submission, I was practicing law of attraction. And I did actually struggle with it. Now that I think about it, like I was doing a lot better remaining positive in my mind, because I would wake up in the morning and I would instantly start thinking bad things, and I would be so anxious throughout my day, and it was just crippling me. So I started practicing law of attraction and just putting in that footwork to just, like, when I am thinking badly, I just turn it when I realize that it's happening. And I stopped waking up, by God's leave, I stopped waking up in the mornings instantly thinking bad thoughts. And the anxiety was just falling away. But it was like every so often, it was getting better where, like, I could go like a whole couple weeks, few weeks, a month without feeling any depression, any anxiety. But then just one day, it was almost like it would all catch up to me, and I would crash from it, and I would feel just exhausted and sad and just like a couch potato. Like I couldn't get off the couch and do anything. I was just depressed. And I've thought about, like, doing that, like just forcing myself to just twist the negativities into positivity, like finding the silver lining, finding the light at, finding the light in the darkness, like just being more optimistic and looking at things in a different way, but like centered with this knowing that God, is the one providing that for me if I receive that.
Great sharing. Anyone else want to share any insights? Is there some of that wisdom that God has given you regarding these verses? We read from 22:33 through 48.
Please, I'd like to make a comment.
Please go ahead. God bless you.
Bless you all. What a great study. Thank you so much. It makes my Sunday a beautiful start to it. And thank God for the opportunity. And thank God for all of you, mashallah, who are striving in your own beautiful way. For chapter 18:28. Earlier, we talked about what reaches God is your righteousness, about the sacrificing of the animals. But I think, when I look at it in a general term and all around, it's really a beautiful statement or verse, because God says, look, what the materials I've given you belongs to me. I've created all that. But what comes to me is your actions of righteousness. And then there was a gentleman who gave a sermon. It was really nice. He outlined two styles or two classifications. Form and substance is how we are to follow God's command. Where form is important, like when you do your Salat, you want to be obedient, you want to do a nice posture and do the commandments of bowing, prostration. But the substance is the key. And that's when you're reverent. And the substance is what reaches God, because that's what God is teaching us. What's on the inside, what good deeds you have, what you formulate by God's will in a nice thing is reaching God. And there's a verse, inshallah, I want to read chapter 74, verse 56. Chapter 74, verse 56. It says, they cannot take heed against God's will. And then the last sentence, it says, he is the source of righteousness. He is the source of forgiveness. I love how the two go together, because he is the source of righteousness. So what ascends to him is that. And that's why the substance is so important for us, family, myself, that what is in the inside, what our hearts want, is purely the good deeds, good righteous behavior, good conduct, high moral standards, and as we really represent submission. and God in the sense what He's taught us and blessed us with. I wanted to share that. Thank you very much.
God bless you.
Peace be upon you. Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I'm just reading over, about the livestock and how they provide us with many benefits for a period before being donated to the ancient shrine. And it says, for each congregation, we have decreed rites whereby they commemorate the name of God for providing them with the livestock. And then it continues to say that the animal offerings are rites decreed by God and mentioning God's name while they're standing in line. And then it says, this is why we subdued them for you, that you may show your appreciation, and that neither their meat nor their blood reaches God, but reaches them as your righteousness. I think we were talking about this the other day, maybe last Quran study, about just livestock, animals, and how, we're taking a life, right? And reading that part where it says, like, God subdued them for you, there's not really any other food source that God, you know what I mean? Like, plants are subdued by nature. They can't run from you. They can't really attack you unless, I guess, maybe poison ivy. I don't know, but you don't have to worry about poison ivy, like, attacking you while you're just standing in the forest. You know what I mean? And they're living, breathing creatures. I mean, so are plants, but they have, again, organs like we do: a liver, a spleen, kidneys, a nervous system, a heart, circulation system. So that's why, like, a lot of veterinarians, although they're not like doctors for humans, they still have quite a bit of knowledge even with humans, because our bodily functions and systems are very similar to animal body functions and systems. That's why you can take the funny thing is you can actually, and I'm not recommending this, but there are many medications that are for animals, but will also work on humans, because acetaminophen or Tylenol is still acetaminophen, right? It works the same, and things like that. So I'm just, going back to appreciating more about the livestock and the various benefits they provide for us by God's grace. Something that we overlook in our society quite often.
Beautiful.
I have more comments. 22:38. God defends the believers. I love verses like these for the sole reason that God is telling you that, hey, this is my system. So it says, God defends those who believe. God does not love any betrayer or unappreciative. So, don't betray your covenant with God. Don't be unappreciative. And it's very simple. God will defend you, right? So whether it's office, workplace politics, and maybe your boss doesn't like you, or they give you a hard time, or your employees, or your manager, or your supervisor, or maybe a customer dislikes you and wants to complain, and all, whatever it is, right? Or family members and friends or neighbors or whoever, like, one can get very stressed out thinking about all these things and whatnot. But God is saying that as long as you're loyal and you're appreciative, that He will defend you, right? And this is God that is always present when any two people are talking, or three or four, or however many, and He knows their innermost thoughts, and He knows their subconscious, and He's aware of so many factors, right? With his like omnipotent knowledge, and He will plan and scheme on your behalf to protect you. So these are calming verses. These are anxiety reducing verses, as God promises to defend us as long as we uphold our end of the covenant. And likewise, if we find that adversity is befalling us, then we need to reflect: am I upholding my covenants properly? Right? or is there a lack of appreciation in my life where I'm not appreciating God for certain things? Without fail, whenever I have corrected any one of those, God has put his protection back over me, and the blessings have returned by God's grace.
Praise God. I want to chime in regarding just that concept where it says that you read 22:38. God defends those who believe. God does not love any betrayer, unappreciative. That he's equating someone who betrays their oaths, someone who doesn't maintain their word, as the same with someone who's unappreciative. And the word for unappreciative is kafir, right? That they're a disbeliever. This is one of the hallmarks of a true believer, is that they keep their word, that they maintain their oaths. And God is explicitly being very harsh with people who are betrayers, people who don't keep their word. And, every betrayer feels justified in their betrayal. They'll find some sort of justification to say, look, I'm not actually wrong. I had every right to betray my oaths. And I just wanted to read some verses, and this is in Surah 4, starting from 105, that emphasize this point. It says, we have sent down to you the scripture truthfully in order to judge among the people in accordance with what God has shown you. You shall not side with the betrayers. I mean that if you have two parties and one side is clearly, the side of betrayal, God is explicitly saying, do not side with that side. It says, you shall implore God for forgiveness. God is forgiver, most merciful. And then here it says, do not defend the transgressors, meaning that, again, this is in the same context of those who betrayed their oaths. It says, do not argue on behalf of those who have wronged their own souls. God does not love any betrayer guilty. They hide from the people and do not care to hide from God, though he is with them as they harbor ideas he dislikes. God is fully aware of everything they do. Here you are arguing on their behalf in this world. Who's going to argue with God on their behalf on the day of resurrection? Who's going to be their advocate? And then it says, anyone who commits evil or wrongs his soul, then implores God for forgiveness, will find God forgiving, most merciful. Anyone who earns a sin earns it to the detriment of his own soul. God is omniscient, most wise. And then here, anyone who earns a sin, then accuses an innocent person thereof, has committed a blasphemy and a gross offense. Imagine someone, commits the treachery of a betrayal and then accuses the other party for their transgression. Randy's asking, I'm just read. I'll post them in a bit. It's if someone wants to post it, it's 4:105 to 116. I'll read till there. God willing. It says, if we're not for God's grace towards you and his mercy, some of them would have misled you. They only mislead themselves, and they can never harm you in the least. God has sent down to you the scripture wisdom, and he has taught you what you never knew. Indeed, God's blessings upon you have been great. There's nothing good about their private conferences, except for those who advocate charity or righteous works or making peace among the people. Anyone who does this in response to God's teachings, we will grant him a great recompense. As for him who opposes the messenger, after the guidance has been pointed out to him and follows other than the believer's way, we will direct him in the direction he has chosen and commit him to hell. What a miserable destiny. And then it says, God does not forgive idol worship if maintained until death, and forgives lesser offenses for whomever he wills. Anyone who idolizes any idol beside God has strayed far astray. Yeah, I think it's just to hammer that point is like, the hallmark of a believer is that they maintain their word, that they're honest, that they're trustworthy. The hallmark of a disbeliever is that they're a betrayer. They don't maintain their word. They lie, they deceive, they have private conferences. They accuse innocent people for their transgressions. It's interesting seeing that contrast. That's all.
I have a question about this. So, when it comes to these, he's talking about somebody else committing a transgression. What if it's towards a submitter, like, or a believer, like yourself or ourselves, whoever it may be, like that you're in a for lack of a better word, there are people. Like, let's say Moses, for example. He was born in a time where the Israelites were enslaved, right? And there were probably other people, of course, born into that situation. What one is their how do those people, like, how do you stand up for yourself? When do you have the right to defend yourself? When do you have the right to fight oppression? When is it something you deserve? How do you, like, because it can become it could be part of somebody's reality, these things. Like, to me, I always wondered about that, you know.
Peace.
Like, we're just talking about justice, like, when is the punishment just? When is it unjust? When
Yeah,
should
I
we
mean,
take action or shouldn't we?
yeah, there are verses in the Quran that talks about, like, the believers. The believers are those who, if they stand up for their rights, right? And God says, like, if you punish, like, you shall be equitable, or basically, if you do inflict something on somebody as a means of self-defense, you shall be equitable, right? So, I mean, it depends on the situation, right? But the whole point is that if you're being oppressed or you're being transgressed upon, and you find yourself in a situation where you have to resort to self-defense, you're permitted to, and you want to the best of your ability, um, punish or attack back or defend yourself, uh, in a manner where it will deter or stop the oppression or persecution that you're facing, right? And yeah, again, to know exactly how much is enough, right, can be difficult. That's why for most, like, one-off transgressions or things like this, God says resorting to patience is and forgiveness is better. Because yeah, if somebody comes and they push you, like, yeah, you can, and that's all they do, right? You can technically push them back, but if they just pushed you once and that's it, then maybe it's better to just let it go, because maybe I don't know, maybe you may push them too hard, or you may punch them. I don't know, something like this. But yeah, just you can defend yourself if you're in a situation where, like, with the example you gave, they're slaves. Like, if they say, hey, Pharaoh, stop, then they'll just kill all of them, right? He did it before. He killed their sons, their men and their sons, and spared their daughters, um, and things like that. So Pharaoh's power was a little too much. There's not much you can do, and God put them in that situation as like a punishment and as a trial for their past transgressions. And it was with the sending of a messenger that they got freed. So if you're in you're in a country where you have no option, and any self defense will result in you just being killed, then maybe it's better to try and emigrate if you can. We have verses about emigrating in the cause of God where you won't be persecuted. Does anybody else have insight to such a question?
I put some verses, and you'll see this theme in the Quran in multiple places. 42, 37 through 43, it says, they avoid gross sins and vice, and when angered, they forgive. They respond to their Lord by observing the contact prayer Salat. Their affairs are decided after due consultation among themselves, and from our provisions in them, they give to charity. And here it says, when gross injustice befalls them, they stand up for their rights. Although the just requital for an injustice is an equivalent retribution, those who pardon, maintain righteousness, are rewarded by God. He does not love the unjust. Certainly, those who stand up for their rights when injustice befalls them are not committing any error. The wrong ones are those who treat the people unjustly and resort to aggression without provocation. These have incurred a painful retribution. Resorting to patience and forgiveness reflects a true strength of character. So it
Like I
shows.
say, it's those things that we're reading right now. These are these can be lonely battles. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when there is oppression, if you are oppressed and you living under oppression, it could be kind of an accepted oppression. It could be but you know that this is wrong. You know this behavior and what happens or what's happening is wrong. So that is like, that is what I wonder. Like, you know it's wrong, you sense it's wrong, you try to like double check, and you really learn that whatever is going on is wrong, and it's oppressive. Then that's what I'm saying. It's like it can be tough.
Yo. 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm very sorry, but
Yeah,
Thank you.
Helios.
I muted him. Let's continue.
He's
He's
also
a good
deaf and
guy. I'm just curious what he was gonna say. That's out of character.
Should I unmute him?
no.
Yeah. Well, let's just.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Hey, Helios.
so
Sorry, brother. Hey. We're just in the middle of a Quran study. We have a format here, so please just respect the format. If you want to chime in or something, we don't yell and uh, interject
oh,
while someone's
I
speaking.
thought you're having a debate or something.
No. This is just a Quran study, brother.
Oh, okay. So you want to know what's going on?
Just
Is
let's wait on it until after Quran
Put
study,
it in the
please.
chat. Yeah, put it in the chat if you don't mind. Is this a politics thing? Like a
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
just
put it
put
in the
it
chat.
in the chat.
Okay.
We
Okay.
can talk about it.
I will write you. I will put it in your DMs, but I will then go back. Have
Okay,
a
brother.
nice.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Keeps people awake on their toes.
Yeah.
So here
But
is
just
a question, brothers and sisters. So if we have oppression in the house, inside your home, do you just leave home? Do you
Here's the thing.
migrate your home and leave your whoever is
It
pressing,
depends.
whether it's a father or a husband or a grandfather or whatever who's oppressing you? Do you resort to leaving, not
Abraham
rather
did
than
that.
defending your rights or anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Abraham had enough of it with his family, with his father and his village. So he was like, I'm done with you guys oppressing me this much, wanting to kill me. And he just left them. And I think, if it reaches that point that, I don't know, your family's like not letting you pray and harassing you all the time and, oppressing you, then
But with the man, it's kind of easy to do. But how about a woman?
it's not about a man or a woman. It's about God making it easy for you. I'm sure God will make a way for you. God will move mountains. If it's that, okay, maybe the woman is weak, she can't go on her own, then she will find a man, a righteous man that will take her with him.
So you say
So
that, yeah, she may. It's not an unrighteous thing to do. Is to leave the oppression or that place where she's oppressed and move away.
I know where I come from, like Middle East and like that culture, women are not supposed to live on their own, or you're not supposed to leave your family. And I don't think that's a Quranic thing necessarily, right? If you're
Yeah,
oppressed, if you're
yeah.
being mistreated anywhere, the Quran says, immigrate. God's land is very spacious. There's so much space for you to move. And if you decide to immigrate in the cause of God, for sure He will help you and assist you in that way, God willing.
God willing, yeah.
I wanted to chime in. Um, it can be tough, right, for both men and women. It depends on the circumstance, depends on the situation. Like, you can have like a young boy, a teenager who's like maybe 16, 18, he's still dependent on his family, and maybe he's in an oppressive situation as well. And it can be difficult, right? It can be difficult. Every circumstance it can be different, but is leaving off the table? No, of course not, right? Um, you try your best to remedy the situation. Maybe the family member has a misunderstanding of your belief, or it depends on the reason for persecution as well. If it's religious or if it's personal, right? Or maybe it's just that's how the person is, or just oppressive in general. Circumstances vary from situation to situation, but this is where these verses that I was talking about, the anxiety reducing verses, the encouraging verses, where God says that He defends the believers, that do not think that those who commit sin can never get away with it, and verses like this, and that God is the avenger, God is the supporter, God will create an exit, for people who need it, and things like this, and whatnot, right? So these verses have helped me in oppressive, in bad situations. And yeah, God always, He either made an exit or He removed that person from my life when it got too much, or had me leave, and things like this. So it's tough to say, right? But is leaving the household out of the question? No, right? Like Sajjad said, he cited Abraham and how he also left. Blue Cyrus, brother, your mic is unmuted. You have a hot mic, brother. Yeah, that's my comments.
There is a Surah 65 divorce. What's interesting about this verse is almost at the end of every verse, God gives some words of encouragement. If you talk to anyone who's gone through a divorce, they'll tell you it's like the hardest thing in their life they have to deal with. So it's suitable that it would be in this verse, but obviously the same principle applies to any struggle someone's going through. So for instance, in 65:1, the last sentence, you never know, maybe God wills to bring something good to come out of this. Verse 2, anyone who reverences God, He will create an exit for him. Verse 3, God has decreed everything its fate. Verse 4, anyone who reverences God, He makes everything easy for him. Verse 5, anyone who reverences God, He remits his sins and rewards him generously. So it's like verse 7, God will provide ease after difficulty. And it's interesting in these tough situations. Yeah, we are supposed to follow a certain procedure. We try reasoning, logic, hold our ground, stand up for our rights. But at a certain point, if we see that, hey, look, this is not working in our favor, we're being persecuted, we're being oppressed, we can't worship our religion freely, God says that He'll create an exit for you. And those who emigrate in the cause of God, they'll find great, richness and bounties. So, we just trust the process. This doesn't mean that we stick around and we're what's the word? We become complacent or apathetic.
Well, there
We
are
just
people
trust in God.
get oppressed, but not because of God. It's just marital, issues and family issues, and they get oppressed and they leave, they migrate. Is that something not considered as like in the cause of God, because of oppression?
If we're suffering any hardship, right? Think of this, like, so say the verses that we chapter 65 are in the context of divorce, right? Doesn't mean that, hey, there's anything ungodly that's going on, or one party is like persecuting the other. It's just like this is an extremely difficult situation for people, and even under those circumstances, God is giving these assurances.
Yeah, I know a person, really, I'm asking because I know a person she's been oppressed. She lived overseas. She's been oppressed. Her husband is always beating her up and never bring a penny, and they're suffering. She has kids, and she keeps getting beat up. And her father left her a big share of inheritance. He was a millionaire, but her siblings took that, and they did not giving her anything. And she bargained for her divorce with her husband to give him some of the money that she inherited for her freedom. And he did give her divorce and took the money, but then after he spent the money, he came claiming her. And anyway, she went through a lot, so she ran away. She ran away. She got an opportunity to come to the U.S. And that is kind of weird because it's very difficult to get a visa and come to the US, but she was able to come. She left her kids behind, but she still maintained her connection with her kids, but she's been suffering since then. And I was wondering, was it wrong to leave the kids? Was it wrong to migrate, seeking peace? She wants to work and send money and support her kids, but she wouldn't be able to do that if she stayed there. And her husband doesn't have a job. He keeps just taking money, and he keeps going to gambling. So, but since she came to the US, she's been going from one home to another trying to survive, and she's been humiliated. She went through a lot of hardship, and she's still going through that. So I was wondering, is she is she being punished? I mean, she's Sunni, but
Yeah.
just 2 weeks ago, I introduced the submission to her, and she became a submitter. She said, she'll follow everything I tell her, and she believed it. She said, it's not like my religion helped me. It's not like those people who followed the religion did any better. And she followed what I told her, and she said she feels more peace. But she's still, I mean, going through a lot of hardship. Do you think she's still getting punished for leaving the family, or is this a test, or is there something I can tell her that can kind of comfort her and reassure her?
I think Quranically, the mothers do not have the same responsibilities as men. Men do have to provide for the children and for their children and their wives. But as far as I can tell, for the mother, beyond just breastfeeding the babies, she doesn't have a religious responsibilities on them.
Oh,
On
that's
them.
not a religious responsibility. We're talking about being a mother. She's caring for her kids. They are the most important thing in her life right now. So
Well,
she's going through a lot of suffering just to raise money to send those, because now they are in college. She's paying for their tuition. Her husband is not paying for that, and neither are her family, siblings and mother. So she has to struggle, go through a lot of hardship here just to raise money and send it to her kids to pay for their tuition.
I mean, if
I
they're in college, oh, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
I mean, look, we have to start with the order of operations, right? Like, if you're solving a math problem, there's a certain order of operations. When we're fixing issues in our life, the same thing, there's an order of operation. The number one thing is our relationship with God. Everything else is secondary. This is like someone who has, like, say, for instance, like a nail stuck in their eye, and they're complaining because, hey, my toe hurts. It's like, first you have to address the big elephant in the room. And it seems like she's doing that, right? That it's her relationship with God. If she fixes that, you'll be amazed at what the other aspects in her life will work out. So I think, start with that and then discuss these other tidbits,
Yeah,
because these are all symptoms of a bigger issue.
this is what she kept coming to me when she's sick and not feeling good and needs help and all this, and I've been helping her as much as I could. But at the end, I said, okay, let me just tell her this thing, and I hope she'll believe. I told her, you need to fix your relationship with your God. She said, what do you mean? I told her, you need to do this. If you trust me and you believe me, I'm her only friend here in the US. I told her, if you trust me, you need to trust what I'm telling you and follow what I'm telling you. So she said, I will trust you. So I introduced, I told her, you need to remove all the shirk in your salah, remove Muhammad, remove all this thing. And the shahada has to be only one shahada. Believe in this. This is the beginning. And she said, okay. So she started doing this. And this is when she said, I'm starting to feel peace. This is when, and then after that, I started introducing a little bit of the submission. And she said, I will follow. And I advise her to pray only the prayers on time, not do like the Sunni, oh, they can make it up if they miss, and try to keep the prayers, not to miss any, and recite Fajr and recite Quran at Fajr and at night. And I told her, introduce this to your kids. She sent and she shared this with her kids, but I'm not sure about her kids if they are receiving it well, because there's not much to introduce. They're all in English, and she doesn't know much English. She said, if you can share with me in Arabic. So I couldn't find, but today Amr shared with me the Arabic version, which is amazing. That was given by Mujahid, brother Mujahid. Praise God. But anyway, so when she started following the submission, footsteps, she said, I'm starting to feel better as far as health and peace of mind, because she had a lot of anger and resentment towards her family. And I told her, I shared with her some verses, to give her comfort. Either she can, if she can find in her heart to forgive and steadfast and focus on God, and let God and submit to God, and believe he's with the believers, and believe unconditional, and all these things. I advised her a lot, and she's trying to follow. She said she's feeling much better. But as far as feeling is good, but she also, in the same time, she's going through hardship as far as income and jobs, because she's in a city where nobody speaks Arabic. She's struggling with that, and it's very difficult to find a job for someone like her, and she gets abused wherever she goes. They keep beating her up, and she gets ending up in the hospital. And then it's a circle she's been going through everywhere she goes to work. I don't know if this is going to get any better, but that's how her situation is right now.
Please. I'm gonna just second what Peter said, right? As she fixes more of her submission and her relationship with God, and also fixes her own, I guess, conduct. Because as submitters, there's ways we're supposed to behave and deal with matters and whatnot, right? As this gets corrected and just the submission becomes more aligned with how it's supposed to be, a lot of her problems will start to go away. I know what it's like when you make a decision and then you're wondering, did I make the right decision? Did I make a mistake? Was I supposed to stay or was I supposed to go? I don't know. And another verse that has provided me assurance and just calmed me down was, it's a fantastic verse. It's very profound. It says, whether you chop a tree down or leave it standing in its trunk is in accordance with the will of God, right? And this has helped me with decision paralysis, where you're between options, you don't know which one to pick, and you're afraid of picking the wrong one. Or if you've made a decision already and you're wondering, did I make a huge mistake and whatnot? And at the end of the day, we think we're choosing, but we're not really. And whatever we choose, God, before He created a single creature at all, right, already knew what every decision we're ever going to make in our existence. And with that knowledge, He's already planned accordingly. So it's very profound. And obviously, the biggest reason why God had her move to America and meet you is so that she can get the message of submission. Because wherever she was prior, I doubt she would be getting the message, especially given her circumstances, right? So the first step was that God saw that she deserved to at least get the message and accept it. Now it's up to her if she's going to stay on the path and continue purifying herself. And as the purification, moves along and progresses, so too will her life, God willing.
Thank you, brother.
Anyone else have comments regarding the verses as a whole too?
I did.
There
Let me
was
just go back. Those are verses that caught my attention.
there's
Where is the
a
verse?
while you're looking for that, there was one from earlier. I think Brandy cited it. Yeah, 47. They challenge you to bring the retribution, and God never fails to fulfill His prophecy. I always found that this is hilarious. Like you think about it, God's messenger comes, and they always offer two things. One is the good news for those who take heed, and a warning to those who don't. And it's consistent that the disbelievers, and I've seen this numerous times for myself, rather than saying, oh, okay, if this is true, God, shower me with your blessings, they say, no, God, I bring the retribution. Like, why would you ask for that? Like, it's so bizarre to me. Someone comes and says, hey, I got great news for you. But if you accept this, you're going to have perfect health, wealth, and happiness. But if you don't, you're going to really suffer from it. Okay, great. Send me the suffering. It's like, what? Why didn't you just ask for the blessings? Like, why did you have to challenge the retribution? Like, I feel like God is directing their minds towards that kind of predisposition to bring out their true convictions.
That's hilarious because we witnessed that in real life too, like where people, they come and we're talking to them and they're like, if Rashad Khalifa is a messenger of God, may God curse me. It's like, why? Why do you ask for that? It's hilarious. It's a weird phenomenon, man. But like you said, God directs them to just dig their heels down on their decision. I wanted to comment on verse 39. Verse 40. Well, I guess both of them. The subheading says synagogues, churches, and masjids, and it says they were evicted from their homes unjustly for no reason other than saying our Lord is God. If it were not for God's supporting of some people against others, monasteries, churches, brother, you have a hot mic, brother. Monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids, where the name of God is commemorated frequently, would have been destroyed. Absolutely, God supports those who support Him. God is powerful, Almighty. Actually, amazing. This is a 2-for-1. So one, it says God supports those who support Him. So this is another one of those anxiety reducing verses where you read that and God is saying, hey, if you support me, I will support you. So if you have things going on in your life, right, find a way to support God, right? Glorify Him, commemorate Him, spread the truth, share the message, advocate righteousness, forbid evil, with the intention of wanting to support God, and God will then support you in your life. So these are wonderful equations here. But 40, it was interesting because I guess prior to submission or prior to really coming across this verse, I thought of like synagogues and churches and masjids as like bad places. These are factories of idolatry and they're so horrible and God probably dislikes them and they should, like if they're going to continue, they'll get destroyed. But this verse kind of caught me off guard. It was like, God is saying that he has supported some people over others so that churches, synagogues, and masjids and places of worship don't get destroyed. And I believe the messenger commented on this and said, like, even though there's idol worship happening in those places, there's still some commemoration of God's name. There are still some people there who are sincerely looking for God, and yeah, they don't have it right now. Maybe they don't have all the full information right now, but they're looking for more. Right? Bluski, could you mute your mic? You have a hot mic. Thank you. Right, and I found that interesting because you would think like, yeah, these idol worshippers, they should just be destroyed or whatever, but God wants to give them opportunity and chance to reflect and keep reading and potentially get closer to God. And another reason I find this interesting is because of like this whole topic of hypocrites and what do you do with them. And I've heard somebody say that it is sinful for a hypocrite to do the Salah contact prayers. When a hypocrite performs Salah, and I'm talking about the way we do it as the Messenger of the Covenant does it, right? They said that, yes, that is a sin because God says they're getting up lazily and things like this. And that just blew my mind because here we have these places where, although they're committing idol worship, God would rather these places be standing and have people commemorating God at least some of the time than none of the time, right? And this person was saying that it's better for hypocrites not even to pray a salat, and that just like that. I was quite shocked to be quite honest. Another thing I wanted to say was, as I deal with the public a lot through the nature of my job, and I meet all kinds of people, and the people that I find I like the most are the religious people, right? I for some reason like them more than people who are non-religious, because there's something that we at least have in common in connection, is that we're seeking a higher power, we're seeking spiritual growth, we're seeking purification, we're seeking righteousness, right? Even if they are Christian or Jew or even Muslim, right? Despite the differences that we have, there's still this element of, hey, there's a creator and things like that. Yeah, just wanted to share my thoughts and comments and feelings about that.
Yeah, to on that same theme, it's again, there's an order of operation here. Rashad gives this example that he was at a conference and there was a speaker before him who was arguing that the Quran were hallucinations, that the prophet was like epileptic or something. And all the Muslims sat quietly and listened to him, and no one attacked him. And then Rashad gave a speech on how Code 19 proves that the Quran is the divine word of God, and all the people attacked him. It's like the idea is that, yeah, anyone who's promoting godly values or things that are towards the right direction, we should support them in that endeavor. Meaning, like, let's say you're in a debate and you have one side that's arguing for God and the other side that's arguing that God doesn't exist. That, yeah, in that debate, we're going to want to assist and support the side that's arguing for God. Does that mean that we agree to everything that person stands for? No, of course not, right? But I think you have this like purist mentality where it's, unless someone shares 100% of the same belief on every single topic as I do, then they're the worst of the worst, and they'll they won't see any support or um, uh, you know kind of what's the word I'm looking for? But yeah, from that side.
Peace. I would just like to tag on to what Brother Ilham was saying and what we've been saying about verse 40. In particular, where it says, if it were not for God's supporting of some people against others, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids, where the name of God is commemorated frequently, would have been destroyed. To be specific, communism, a predicate for communism is the destruction of religion. Prior to establishing socialism and communism in the former Soviet Union, as we know as Russia, they destroyed the church. They assassinated. Hot mic somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, Douglas, keep going, brother.
Yeah,
Assassinate.
they assassinated the Rachmaninoff, the family, the Tsar of Prussia. They assassinated the royal family prior to establishing communism in Russia. And something that some people may not be aware of, in China, the Communist Party really does not support any religion. They tolerate pockets of beliefs, but it's totally contrary to the communist system or any totalitarian fascist system. And I just wanted to make that comment, because there clearly God is saying that he is in control. God is in control. He controls these activities, but we must do our part. We must advocate righteousness, stand up for our rights, and, fight in the cause of God against those evil entities. Peace.
Yeah, it's interesting in the context of communism, they see religion, the concept of someone having their loyalty to a god or religion at odds with their utopia vision. So they'll use it as a tool to kind of gain power, but their end goal is to eradicate any devotion to anyone other than the state party. My parents went on a trip to China. It was like one of these tours and stuff, and they were in the Beijing, the sacred city, and there was a Pakistani couple that was about to get arrested because they found an alleyway to go and pray in. And if it wasn't for God's leave and the tour guide, who basically intervened and said, "Look, these guys don't know they're here on a tour." They were ready to be thrown in jail for praying.
Peace. I have another comment. This is referring to verse 41. They are those who, if we appointed them as rulers on earth, they would establish the contact prayer, Salat, and the obligatory charity, Zakat, and would advocate righteousness and forbid evil. God is the ultimate ruler. Is this verse primarily in the context of a society, a community of submitters? What I'm asking basically and commenting about is that just if a ruler is just, they would establish prayer. Would they actually establish prayer and the obligatory charity as law in that country? Now, what I would like for us to do, God willing, in our discussion is distinguish between the bogus concept of Sharia in traditional Islam versus what God says in verse 41, that those who are guided rulers, they would encourage and establish prayer and the charity. But that's as far as it goes. Everything else is consistent. All is consistent with the Quran. Thank you. Peace.
Salam alaikum. The whole thing with the communism and socialism, there's I grew up in a country where social democracy kind of, to me, got its head start in, which is Sweden, where people they started to put everybody as equals, human beings, or like you're not upper class, lower class. You didn't like we didn't for overtime. You didn't call your boss or at work sir or anything like that. We're equal. We have equal rights in the community. But a lot of people do not believe in God there. But the church is still very much part of the daily life. Like that's how I was able to come to the conclusion by God's leave to become a submitter. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to protest, freedom to stand up for your rights is very strong in a country with social democracy. So it's not like like if you read up on the original stance of communism, it was about that equalize and give equal rights. But then, of course, people took the ideology and made it into what like Soviet Union is doing and China, whoever it is, to become more oppressive. But that can also be said if you're moving too much towards the right end of things, you end up with uh, Nazis and nationalism, and so you have the both end of the spectrum. One can go too far on that side and one too far on the other side. My grandmother was religious. Of course, she was very charitable, very caring, very helpful. Like she loved to. Sweden is one of the countries where immigration are taking in people that come from war and fleeing oppression. Over the years, have been their number one thing. Like, you know what I mean? Now there's probably almost more immigrants than Swedish people, maybe. I don't know. But so you can't like just make a blanket statement that says like socialism or is all bad, and you know the people think that way, because you have to do a little bit more digging, guys, into this, because I feel like in the United States, which is supposed to be the land of the free, you're more likely to get shot and killed for saying what you want than you are in social democracy Sweden, or like Germany, or uh, Norway, or something like that. Then so it all depends. It depends on the people, and it depends on how we use those laws. And freedom of religion is big in Sweden. That's why there's so many submitters there. If you think about percentage wise of believers, that's my 2 cents. God willing.
I wanted to comment regarding Douglas's question about establishing the Salat. What's interesting is it's the same word that's used when it says to the believers, those who observe the contact prayers, or we say Aqamu Salat, right, before we pray the Friday prayer. From my understanding, it's not that you make it, how do you put it, like you have to do this, right? Because that goes against the principle of the Quran. My thought is whoever God appoints as a ruler really becomes a figurehead or representation of kind of the sentiment of the people. Meaning that if God put them in that position, you're going to most likely be in a society where they're going to share those same values. And when that individual is demonstrating that, yes, the salat and the zakat is of maximum importance for them, then that becomes reflective to the members of the society. So rather than being, like a state force in the sense of like getting people to do the salat, it becomes something that is a more of a grassroots effort. Where if they see that, yeah, the ruler in this context is making this a priority, then the people under their rule are going to make it a priority for themselves as well.
Praise God. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Brother Peter. This is exactly the clarification that is important here. Because as we know, there's no coercion in religion. God has made free will sanctified. There's no force and coercion. And this verse is actually saying that these individuals would be models. They would be role models of what is appropriate. And this is in sharp contrast to the concept of Sharia law, which we will not go into in any detail in this Quranic study. But many of the so-called scholars and rulers in the supposedly Muslim countries, majority of Muslims, will take verses like verse 41 and justify a theocracy, a clergy-dominated theocracy or rule of their country. Peace. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing, we have to emulate this on the micro and the macro, in the sense where you see a lot of individuals, they think like, okay, when I'm in power, then I'll resort to that. But right now, I got to be a little more aggressive with my approach. And you see this among, sadly, in some supposed Semitic communities where they want to establish a hierarchy because they think that this is going to be more efficient. Right? Hey, let's just listen to what this one guy has to say. Whatever they say, the rest of them will just kind of go along. This is just a more efficient system. And then, yeah, if it gets to the point where it's like going to become, national, international, then we'll go back to a more libertarian approach. And my thought is it has to be from day one that you have this mindset. Like people ask regarding like just the server and this and that, like, oh, hey, can we talk with the quote unquote leadership? Like there is no leadership. Like you just have submitters here. This should be something where we all kind of contribute. Everyone in essence is held to a high regard, and it's not something that is, one individual or a group of individuals who are going to be dictating to the masses, how to believe or what the proper understandings are and stuff like that. I think the appeal for that level of kind of like governance, be it in a small community or larger, is just that, oh, it's gonna eliminate disputes, it's gonna unify this and that, but it just sets a terrible precedent. And what makes someone think that if they're saying, okay, I'll just be a tyrant in this regard, but I'll give it up when the stakes are higher. If you can't do it when the stakes are low, what makes you think you're going to be able to do it when the stakes are higher?
I do believe that when it comes to the human systems, we as submitters we come in under God's system, and whatever somebody calls a system, we only like support them or whatever system when they are is aligns with the Quran. The whole thing of us choosing the lesser of two evils, or uh, is kind of choosing Satan or Satan and Satan. But what I do believe is like that we have an opportunity by God's leave with this beautiful Quran, with this beautiful message that unifies, because that's what the whole point. Like, I think Rashad said that, or the messenger of the comment said, like, he's unifying the religions and unifying people from all over the world under this beautiful umbrella. And I think it's important for us to look and see, like, when we look into worldly aspects, or no matter what, if somebody who isn't a submitter, or group who isn't a submitter says something that aligns with the Quran, we stand behind what aligns with the Quran. If they say something that doesn't, then we say we don't stand behind that. And maybe the opposing group we have something else that stands for, that what the Quran stands for. We say, yeah, we stand with you on this topic, on this ideology, because it aligns with the Quran, but we do not stand with you under these other principles that you have, because it goes against God. That I think is a kind of very important for us as individuals and as a group of submitters to kind of try to pay attention to that always. And no matter what, no matter who, no matter what situation, no matter what we kind of like or dislike about this world, that we make sure that we only support, no matter what God is saying, what the Quran is saying, what the laws of his laws are, that we don't like put a blind eye to when a side is clearly disobeying the Quranic verses or the laws of God. That's my 2 cents.
Yes. If it's okay with everyone, maybe we'll jump into just community announcements, and then we can jump back to the open discussion / Quran study. Sister Rose, are you around?
I am, brother. Peace be upon
Praise God.
everybody.
Did you want to make your? I saw you put in the chat. If you just wanted to share it with
I
everyone
do.
on the PC.
Yeah, that would be great. We have a submitter who is really struggling. They've lost their home. And so I'm trying to collect some money for this individual person anonymously. They don't know that we're actually collecting for them because they're not asking for it, but we know about their circumstances. If you want to DM me, I can share. I have Cash App, I have Zelle, or I have PayPal. And then once we've collected by next Sunday, I will try to get this money to that individual person, God willing. So anybody that's willing to give some charity, gain some credits, anything you can give is helpful. Praise God.
Praise God. Anyone else want to share any kind of community updates, projects they're working on, or content?
I have a couple more if that's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I was doing the Quran studies / Friday sermons for the Messenger on Wednesdays. I've asked to do it every Wednesday instead of every other Wednesday, so we're increasing the frequency to every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I will be doing it. I don't know if Triple is going to continue to then do it again at 11 on every Wednesday. So I'll have to discuss that with him. But I'm going to be moving to every Wednesday at 6 p.m., God willing, sharing those videos and having discussion based on that. And then also, I did put a itinerary for the New York meetup in, I think I put it in general chat earlier in the week this week. I think it was Monday. Sister Nita and I were going through and creating one. If there's nobody else that has suggestions on a change, then I think we can move forward with that itinerary, and I can repost it again after today if anybody doesn't have any change. I'll repost it now for what we have, and then if anybody has any suggestions, we can make the changes so that we can get that itinerary narrowed down, God willing. That's all I got, Peter.
Peace,
God
everyone.
bless you,
Can I ask?
sister.
Sorry, brother. Can I ask Sister Rose if it's possible to find out how much we're trying to raise? Is it possible to disclose that or not? It would be helpful. I mean, or maybe you can just DM me privately if you want to keep it anonymous or private. Thank you.
We don't have a setup. We don't have a set amount, brother. It's just we're just trying to collect as much as we can for this person. There wasn't
I
like a
see.
hey, I need this much money to do something. We're just they're in dire straits right now with no place to live. So whatever we
Wow.
can give to for them to be able to find a home would be best.
Yeah.
So
MashaAllah.
as charitable as you can be would be
God
wonderful.
bless you. Thank you. Inshallah.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Inshallah. Praise.
Is a brother a Mujahid?
Yeah, peace, guys. I had a friend of mine who joined the server today. He's a very open to like submission. He knows a lot more about Rashad. He was learning about Rashad for 3 days. We had uh, a very good conversation. He's not really here, but I was just gonna introduce him to like the people here and get him to know more about the server, right? But God willing, he's very accepting of every single thing that I told him about Rashad, and he's actually like striving as we speak. He kind of like reminds me of Hussam in that sense, because this is kind of exactly what he's doing right now. But God bless him, and God willing, we will have him here more on the server. Um, the part that I wanted to announce is that I was just planning on kind of uh, creating a new Arabic community, like Arabic speaking community here on the server. And I would just like to invite everyone who speaks Arabic. Just let me know and like ping me in anyway, so that we'd have Arabic Quran studies moving on, uh, God willing. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say.
That's awesome. I think that it's a huge resource, right? Regarding all those people who, yeah, they don't speak English, they're comfortable in Arabic, to have that resource. So God bless you. I made a video for this week on the Front Talk podcast. I'll put it here. It just goes through a number of the kind of blatant contradictions between the authentic narrations, and a lot of them are they're meant to be humorous, but it's just to show kind of this premise of the Quran in Surah 4, verse 82, where it's a simple metric to determine if something is a revelation from God from something that's not. And according to 482, it says if it was from other than God, they would have found in it numerous contradictions. Meaning that if someone claims that this is divine revelation, but it's riddled with numerous contradictions, therefore it's not it's not divine revelation, and their claim is that the hadith are divine revelation, that they're wahi. And so this video just kind of goes through. There's about, I think, 15 or 20 or so of these simple kind of just contradictions. Some of them we're familiar with. Some of them are I don't think we emphasize enough. so yeah, if anyone's interested to check out that video or share it with other people, to show them that this claim that the hadith are a divine revelation, this is meant to be as a refutation to that.
Alaikum. Peace be upon you, everyone.
Peace.
I just want to share, in our Los Angeles community, we went out at a local park last weekend and handed out brochures about the message of worshiping God alone. And I wanted to share this because it was a simple way to reach people. And a big shout out to Sister Medina, if she's here. God bless her and her husband for organizing everything. So yeah, you can do this too in your own community too. Like bring just one desk, in a park, and put some brochures there, and just smile. If God wills, then people might come and take some brochures and read some brochures. And the other announcement I have about the project Reach 19. So Reach 19 is our like a outreach hub to introduce the Quran's mathematical miracle. I shared an image in the Islam chat. So we are targeting some of the world's most, curious minds. We are collecting public emails of people like YouTubers, professors, journalists, writers, and like thinkers. It doesn't matter really. So far, we reached to 300 people in our list. We have the email list so far, praise God. And if you know anyone we should include, you can just send us their name and email, and we will take care of the rest, God willing. Thank you.
Praise God. I feel like we got a really good momentum with the spread of submission. It was interesting. I was listening to something. It was saying that the religions, the dominant religions of today, that they for centuries they've been hiding under obfuscation, where people couldn't really challenge their understanding. They just had to take them at face value. But today, with just being able to search online and services like ChatGPT, people can fact check all this information, and they're realizing like, hey, what they're claiming just is factually inaccurate. And it's like the timing for submission is just perfect, in the sense where it's like, yeah, we don't have all that baggage where you look both Christianity, Judaism, they have to defend 1,000+ years of just nonsense. And God's giving us a clean slate to work with, a purified religion. If no one else has any other updates, or stuff that they're working on that they want to share, let's get back to the study. We can expand this now, not just to the verses, but any topic that people want to bring up regarding the verses we read, or just the Quran or religion in general. We can open up the discussion to all that. Anyone have anything they would like to So share questions or comments, observation.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, please. Brother Douglas brought up a good point earlier, and you've talked about it, mashallah, but there are those who can establish, we can establish them as rulers, and they would advocate righteousness, promote the practices that God has blessed them with submission, for example. I'm paraphrasing the verse. I think there are three instances in the Quran that comes to my mind. One is Suleiman, Prophet Suleiman, Prophet David, and I think those two set a real good example in terms of how they ruled and how they practiced judging and setting the example, establishing God's law, especially where in the Quran God uses them to demonstrate, to show that their priority, with all the vast wealth, for example, God gave Suleiman, his priority was to please God, to bring himself closer to God, to establish a system that's justly and pleasing God. And I think that was the blessing that God bestowed upon him and those who he makes rulers. And then the third one that comes to my mind is Zulqarnain, right? God made him a ruler and he ruled. And he says, it's in the passage that says you can help or assist or punish as you will. So God gave him the choice of exercising, but in his thought, in his responsibility, he had the situation where he had to observe the commandments, and God was in his conscience at all times. I think that's where it makes a distinction to me, where one becomes a ruler or sits a situation where they're establishing God's law, you have a great responsibility. You really have tremendous responsibility because of that requirement and those conditions. Yeah, that's what I want to share. Thank you.
It's funny. I always skeptical of anyone who is begging or desperate for being in positions of power or authority. I feel like as submitters, we realize like the responsibility that takes, and we would be conscientious, and cautious of such responsibility. I think the prayer that Abraham gives is so perfect. It says, "My Lord, let my example for future generations be a good one." Like the best way to lead, by God's leave, is to just be a good example, and that becomes very hard for Satan to attack against. Because consider this: if he can corrupt, let's say we go towards a hierarchical organization, all he needs to do is corrupt one individual, the one on top, and everyone who's following them, blindly, is just going to follow suit. But also in that kind of structure, people put the example of that quote unquote leader as secondary, meaning that they can do all kinds of terrible things, and people will make excuses for them. But if the leadership is tied by example and it's dependent on example, then what's Satan to do? Because let's say he corrupts one individual and they become a bad example. Then people say, okay, well, I don't like that guy's example. I like this other person's example. And Satan's going to constantly have to be pursuing each individual individually, right, to get them to go astray. And that's a much harder task for him, right? It's a lot easier for him to try to put all his focus on one person, get that person to go astray. And then when that person goes astray, all those people who blindly follow them go astray. But if each person is going to say, no, I don't believe in this hierarchy, I'm just looking for the best example, then in essence, Satan has to go and dwindle each individual person. And this becomes much, much more difficult for him. And it keeps the religion more pure, more honest.
MashaAllah. I appreciate that. Absolutely. And I think just to add on again, Brother Peter, is that, when you really realize and appreciate and know God and the responsibility that comes with it, even as submitters, myself, you guys, it's great. We've been given this gift of awareness And we have all the answers where past generations didn't have. And there is no excuse, for example, not setting the best example, repelling people in pursuit of whatever, right? At the end of the day, you have to say, am I pleasing God, especially with all this blessing and information he's entrusted me? And I think that I look at the messenger of covenant, for 8 years, he knew he was a messenger. He didn't want to announce it, right? He was conscious, he was afraid for whatever reasons, but he saw the responsibility and he didn't want it. But then God, of course, forced him to do it, and he did, of course. But he wasn't the one who would go out there and just say, yes, I am the leader, and you better listen to me, and I'm going to have fatwas here and there. It doesn't represent a true submitter or submission. Yes, of course, you stand up for your right. You can do all the things that God has given us in the Quran, but you don't go out of your way to disrupt and not set a good example in submission or repel people. I think that's something that really a lot of people, myself more, we need to reflect on. If I if I repelled one person, I would have to stand before God and answer. Whereas if I did not and invited, however it was, then it's a good setting. It's a good situation where I can, inshallah, make it and be acceptable by God. God bless you.
Peace. I'm back from my service call. Did we read any more verses, or are we on the same verses?
So we didn't read more. It's just kind of the open discussion / if anyone wants to continue commenting on the verses. So the verses were 22, 33 through 48. And then, we were just kind of continuing the conversation regarding leadership, like within submission, or just in God's religion in general.
Did we do announcements already?
Yeah, we already did announcements. If you got any announcements, by all means.
Not much. Just I'm not sure when we had our last mod meeting. I was thinking maybe we should have a mod meeting soon. Maybe it's too last minute today, but God willing, next Sunday after the open portion, right? Good to have touch base with.
Jonathan put some dates in the mod chat for the mods on that. But I think he proposed 2 dates. It looked like one date was more favorable, but
Okay, sweet. So that was already covered. Praise God. The other one with the Saturdays, we have the podcast, and I'm sure it was probably already talked about, but I just wanted to encourage more people to come out and just participate, right? Like chime in. Like it's like the whole podcast thing is not super serious and like where everyone else just has to listen, only the speakers, and type in the chat, post verses. Even we welcome people to come up on the stage and chime in. It's just the more the merrier. Obviously, we may not have like 10 people up at a time. That might be a little much. But yeah.
I couldn't make it for yesterday's one, but you mind giving we actually didn't bring this up there in the update, but if you can share kind of what the topic was, how it went, that'd be great.
I think it was a good topic. It had to do with like religious tolerance and compromising, and what can we tolerate, what can't we tolerate, what does tolerance look like, and what does compromise look like, right? Because that's the big fear. That's like the big concern that a lot of people have, and understandably so, right? Like we read how the Muslims, they got the final testament and they read all the examples of what they shouldn't do, and they fell into the same thing and deterioration of religion. So out of concern of innovating or deteriorating the religion or compromising or not forbidding evil, people kind of go to the other extreme where they're very afraid to compromise, right? And because of that, maybe they're advocating of righteousness and forbidding of evil is a little bit on the extreme side. It's a little too harsh, right? More than that's necessary. And we just talked about that, standing up for the truth is really easy. It's as simple as me saying, hi, I don't agree with that, or I agree with that. Congratulations, you've just advocated for the truth, right? Just by simply stating what you believe, in spite of what other people are saying, or even if nobody's saying anything, you're just proclaiming the truth and you're advocating righteousness, right? Like you're not that as long as you make it clear where you stand and you're firm on that, and you're not going to concede. And concede means to like agree after disagreeing, kind of a thing, right? So as long as you don't agree on falsehood and you make it clear that like, hey, I don't agree with this, it's as simple as that. I wanted to, I didn't do this in the stream, but one example was like I remember I would listen to the audios, and like if there were ever disagreements or like debates or arguments on those things, and you know they would be like, oh, Rashad said this, he said that, he wouldn't raise his voice, he wouldn't like interject everybody, you know, everybody, I need you all to understand, you know, he would just say, no, I didn't, that's not true, I don't believe that. Like it's very calmly, it's like casually just making a statement, right? Doesn't have to get all excited and you know, energetic and for blood to boil and voices to be raised. That's not what standing up for the truth has to entail. So yeah, religious tolerance and compromise. Does anybody have any questions like about that topic for anybody who wasn't there for the podcast? Right, like what is like what are we supposed to be tolerant about and what aren't we? My take was that as long as people are not fighting you or persecuting you, right, then we can tolerate people and be amicable and respectfully disagree and continue to invite with wisdom, right? But we draw the line when aggression is occurring or persecution.
Peace, Elham. How are you?
Peace, Rose. I'm great. God bless you. Praise God. How are you?
I just put in the admin's chats, but I wanted to bring this to the attention of the rest of the group and see their thoughts as well. So a lot of people like myself on Saturdays, I usually have a pretty packed day. It's hard for me to come to the stage, especially during the summertime. Winter will be easier, God willing. But I was thinking that since we are recording it, maybe either Sunday after Grand Quran study or like maybe a Monday or Tuesday, we could do a showing of it in the normal VC, and then that could generate more conversations about the topics and more people could be informed of the topic that we go over, considering most people don't go to the YouTube to watch it. I thought that might be beneficial for the group. So anybody that has any suggestions on that or thinks it's a good idea or maybe not a good idea or a time to do it, I think it would be great for the community.
Mm. I hope people are able to sit patiently for like an hour long, 2 hour long discussion. I mean, that'd be amazing. It's a great idea. Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. Well, I mean, since I don't know if we want to play it now, but we can reignite the conversation as part of it. Like, it's a good open discussion, right, for people who aren't present. Like, let me throw this out to the crowd. Then, God willing, at what point are you no longer supposed to tolerate a religious difference? Like, what is the threshold? What is the cutoff? And what does that look like when you no longer tolerate?
I think it becomes a compromise if you yourself are changing your perspective on your religion. I think tolerance is agreeing to disagree. That's tolerance. Willing to hear the person out is tolerance. But as far as it comes to like RVC, let's talk about our server. I'm okay with tolerating as long as the person is not advocating for the opposite, right? So if we're discussing, let's say hadith, and we have somebody that is discussing it with one of us, but then they're advocating for it over and over again, then I think they need to be shut down. I think at that point we shouldn't be allowing for advocation of sin. right? That's when we become compromising in our community, when we allow that to happen. I think it crosses
Interesting.
that threshold from tolerance to compromising, right?
Hmm.
Because if we're having somebody that's advocating it, not just discussing it, but really going forward and advocating idolatry, um, hadith, any of these things that are sinful, then we have an issue.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. What about everybody else? What do you guys like? When do you draw the line on tolerating, and what does that look like? Does that mean you tell people not to talk anymore? Do you ask them if you're in a masjid to leave the masjid, or you're no longer welcome here, or what is that like? What does that look like? When do you draw the line and say, hey, this is not acceptable, and what do you
Selam
do? Like, what
alaikum.
does that look like? Peace be upon you.
Peace be upon you, Hubi. So
Yes,
the lines are drawn and it's clear in the Quran, and Dr. Rashad Khalifa also expanded his understanding on this. I agree with you that as long as they don't fight us, this is the line I believe. They want to sit among us, they want to study, they want to disagree. As long as they don't openly oppose us or fight us, I think that's all right. In Audio 39 also, which some of them had sometimes been abused or cherry picked, again and again, Rashad brings it back to the two main verses that if they do not fight you, you can befriend them, right? So I think that is the line. They don't openly oppose us, they're not fighting us. It's fine. It's my understanding. God bless you all.
God bless you.
I'll give
Thank you
you a
for input. Go ahead, Rose.
I'll give you a quick scenario of where I think the line was crossed. We have an individual that comes in here quite often. They're not really interested in submission, right? They're really not interested in submission. They're just in here for conversations, and they voice their opinion. And we got into a debate regarding the age of Aisha. Okay, so we debated this. We gave Quranic verses. They don't have Quranic verses to back it up, but they're still standing firm in what they're saying, and they're beginning to not only state their opinion about it, but they're advocating for the marriage of young children. And at that point, I had to say, like, okay, brother, I'm not going to mention the person's name. You cannot advocate for these kinds of things in our community. We understand your position. You've made your position very clear. If you're not willing to really discuss it and come to an understanding, then we're going to end this conversation, and I can't have you advocating for those things here. And then that was just the end of it.
Mhm. Honestly, I would probably feel the same way because, yeah, marriage to minors, and I'm not talking about like 17, 18. I'm like talking about like 12-year-olds and stuff like this. Like it's, I find it very vile and gross and disgusting, and I have a hard time tolerating that as well. Because it's oppression, it's abuse. That's just what it is. It's gross oppression and abuse. It's a child. They don't know anything, and they're being severely taken advantage of and abused. So if somebody wants to discuss that, right? That it's not as if to say, hey, the no discussion is just rejected. That's it. But I think if all they're doing is just advocating for it and they're not engaging and they're just saying no, it's allowed, no, it's allowed. There's nothing wrong with it. I would probably shut it down. And the way you shut it down, from what I'm hearing, I think is uh, still a righteous way. That hey, listen, you're not really engaging. You're just advocating for this. It's not really a discussion. It's just you promoting it, and we don't allow for that to be promoted here. I think that was a respectable way to handle that, by God's grace.
Yeah, the person that I said it to didn't get upset. He was just like, okay, I guess, and then I'll just not. And then we just moved on to a different conversation. We just changed the subject, right? Because, and it's not, I mean, that particular one it's just, to me, it's just disgusting, and I hate discussing it, but I will if I believe the person has a shred of sincerity of learning the truth. But once the person has basically said to you that their mind is made up, they are not willing to be open-minded or sincere in hearing any other opposing arguments, and they're just stuck in what they believe, then I think tolerance goes out the window because it's no longer tolerance. Now you're just allowing for them to spread falsehoods because other people are listening, right? Especially in a large VC, we have people that may be new coming in. They're going to get the wrong idea of what we believe or what we allow. And one thing is I want us to be very cognizant of. I understand the stark difference between our server and the other server, right? That we left. At the other server, there was no leeway really for conversations. It was our way or the highway, which is not Quranic, but we can't be the exact opposite of the spectrum, right? So we have to be in the middle. So we have to have the tolerance, but we cannot have people on our server that we're afraid to speak out, right? We're afraid to call them out because we are bouncing to the opposite direction of the other server. If that makes any sense of what I'm trying to say, right? Like we don't want to be all the way on the opposite spectrum. So I have noticed on multiple occasions people just being a little bit overly tolerant with things, and I think it's out of fear of behaving in the way that we didn't like the behavior in the other server. So we can't fear that and then become compromisers because we're afraid to be harsh and stern. There is a place for harsh and stern. We just have to use our understanding of the Quran and how God tells us to apply it correctly.
And I think that's also part of the conversation, right? Like, what does not tolerating, what does harsh and stern look like, right? Because if there is a threshold at which we have to say, okay, hey, enough is enough, we can't tolerate this, what does that look like? How do you deal with it? What does that look like? How do you go about it? And things like this, right? Obviously, does it mean we yell? Does it mean we mock? Does it mean, like, what is it? Like, what does that look like, right? And in the case example that you gave, I think that's a good example of how to deal with it chronically. And again, the other thing is, okay, that's this server. What about like masjid, right? Like, let's say they see dietary prohibitions differently than you do. Let's say somebody thinks circumcision, maybe it is a ritual that submitters are supposed to partake in, or something of this nature, right? What do you do then?
I think it's the same, right? It's the same situation. I'm so sorry, brother Douglas and brother Justin both unmuted, so I'll be quiet so they can speak. Go ahead, brother Douglas.
Peace. Thank you. I'm referring to Surah 17, verses 73 through 75. 73 to 75. This is a specific subtitle, God Strengthens a Messenger. They almost diverted you from the revelations we have given you. They wanted you to fabricate something else in order to consider you as a friend. If it were not that we strengthen you, you almost lean towards him just a little bit. Had you done that, we would have doubled the retribution for you in this life and after death, and you would have found no one to help you against us. Now, this is given to the messenger, but it also provides us with an example in terms of communicating the truth and God's system, God's laws. And what struck me, what stands out in these verses is, for example, in 73, they wanted you to fabricate something else in order to consider you a friend. In other words, deviate from what God has revealed, come up with my own personal opinion, or come up with some other type of interpretation that is totally against or not consistent and does not reflect God's laws. And God points out that he strengthens us and what? You almost lean towards him, right? In other words, in these conversations and dialogues, we do not lean towards any perspective or attitude that we know clearly contradicts God's laws. However, that doesn't mean we flatly reject the person and do not allow them to speak. It's simply we are consistent in terms of we do not compromise and dilute and water down, so to speak, what God has made clear. And that's what I wanted to bring out. Thank you. Peace.
God bless you, brother. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, peace. It's kind of just putting a hat on a hat, but I believe if we act accordingly to the Quran on a day-to-day basis, these things kind of get filtered out by themselves, right? Like God tells us that there should be a community that forbids evil, right? So once we have those contradictions or those contradictory topics being brought up, if we just address it immediately, and continuously until it's like either conceded upon or they leave. Like that's kind of the idea, right? Like if the community is constantly addressing this point, let's say for instance, right? Oh, there's only 3 prayers. No, every time you bring it up, like it's like no, there's 5 prayers. It's clear in the Quran. Let's continue, right? And continuously having that discussion. The problem gets kind of alleviated by itself as long as we're firm in that stance, right? There's no wiggle room on that. As soon as they feel like they can negotiate, that's when we have kind of breached that point of forbidding evil. And that would be my take. I don't know. I'm curious as to what you guys think.
What did you do, Justin?
Oh, no, sorry about
Killed
that,
the
guys.
VC as usual.
Per use.
I mean, it's just a mic drop. How do you follow up after such a great comment? Okay, that's interesting. So just to recap, you draw the line on any falsehood in general, if I'm understanding correctly. And the way to deal with it is you just simply state the truth. And if there's something that's very much obvious, like the contact prayers or things of this nature that the messenger has clearly clarified and the Quran clearly clarifies, then we just simply say, hey, we don't accept that. And this is what we accept. This is the truth. And we don't accept this other idea that you're propagating. Let's just move forward and leave it at that and whatnot. But my question is, what about the not so necessarily obvious where you may even have like a 50-50 split, right? Where you have a significant portion of people, and again, not to bring up these specific topics for debate, because there's people on both sides, but dietary prohibitions, or it could be circumcision, or it could be Christian marriage, right? What do you like? Where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line? How do you deal with that, and whatnot?
So, if you remember, we said, okay, when we read the Quran, there are certain things maybe you will come up with different understanding. I come up with different understanding. Then what we see, what the Messenger Covenant clarified, like when these 2 subjects, what you mentioned, is already clarified by the Messenger Covenant, right? But there are sometimes certain subjects, like I don't know, I don't remember, to be honest, but there are certain things that they might not be specifically prohibited or clarified for us. I think we have to leave it at that instead of dividing. Giving it time, studying about it,
without calling each other names or dividing the community. But these two subjects which you mentioned is already clarified by the Master Covenant. So that's then that it will be solved if we accept that, God willing.
But so here's the thing, Brother Roger. This is why I bring up some of these stuff, because it can get dicey, right? Where one person is looking at the messenger's works and saying, "Hey, well, I see him explaining the same thing that you're looking at, but I'm just coming to a different conclusion. So, like, what do we do there?" And this is, a submitter, and this is what they're saying their understanding is. What do we do? How do we handle that? Do we
I
tolerate?
think
Do we
I,
compromise?
Mhm.
Like, what would be compromising? What would be tolerating, and things like that? What is my right as someone who sees the truth one way, and what is their right as someone who sees the truth another way in the community, in the masjid?
Peace. May I add something?
Go ahead, brother.
So, God willing, I'll hit send on this verse 22:41. I seek refuge in God from Satan, the rejected. There are those who, if we appointed them as rulers on earth, they would establish the Salat and the Zakat and would advocate righteousness and forbid evil. God is the ultimate ruler. And what I'm thinking of focusing on is like forbidding evil. And so I want to say, in that situation that the brother was expressing, we could hone in on what is evil and is it evil? Because if we have a different understanding, and we concluded it isn't evil, right? That they're not acting evil and just having a sincere different understanding or different interpretation, then I don't think it should be forbidden. But if we advocate righteousness, that is, we invite to hopefully to the truth, right? To an enlightened understanding of God's law, and they reject it, and then they go and if in some way we can conclude, okay, that is evil, right? There is evil there without suspicion, but with verification, then that's what we forbid, I think.
So the source of all evil is falsehood, right? So anything that just like Elham brought up a good point. If there's a debate where like the truth is unknown, there's no clear way to point it out, then you just discuss it and you ask God for guidance and make that the centerfold, right? Like the truth. What is the truth, and submitting to that. However, if it's abundantly clear and it can be purported, like this is very clear, it's objectively true, we must stomp out falsehood immediately, especially when it comes into the community, right? So, like, the source of evil can simply be like a lie that's accommodating to, inadequacies of an individual, which is often the case, right? That would be the point. So, like, evil is just like the symptom. The source would be falsehood, if that makes sense.
That's a nice point, Mike. I also want to add that I think it again boils down to the sincerity of the person, because one problem I see over the years is that sometimes certain individuals, to try to prove some of their points, they cherry pick certain information from the Quran or the audio, but if we look at it sincerely all together, like the collective information, not cherry picking one, especially when it comes to audio and videos, this is very important, because this is, as we know, it is very valuable information. It expands our understanding on Quran, but we should look at them in the light of the Quran and the context of it, because it's very easy to misquote it by cherry picking, or it was the progressive revelations. It took 8 years the purification of the Quran, so we cannot go find something from 1983, for example, or to prove a certain point. I think that is where some submitters make mistake. You have to look at it all together, information in the light of the Quran, and of course God will guide the sincere to the truth. God willing. I can give you even an example. For example, when the discussion about the tone of Salah come up, right? We were directed to a pamphlet, and certain individuals, certain submitters, they said, "Hey, you're saying this is, we have to do it in a certain way." But then you saw, and we found like an audio in 1989 in being recited audible. Then we having another section is being in a lower tone or different tone. So this is where things got a little bit, we have to remind ourselves that if there's anything specifically not prohibited in the Quran, it's permissible for us. So when it comes, for example, in individual prayer, when certain individuals left the server, it became a hot topic. This is not specifically clarified by the messenger. When you individual prayer, I'm talking about. Please note that I'm talking about individual prayer, not the Friday prayer. That is clear. We have videos. Anyone who argues against that, that's their tough luck. But individual prayer, I think it's, in my understanding, is both is okay. A little bit higher tone or lower tone during ruku sujood. The important is the al-Fatiha to be in Arabic and in moderate tone. So that caused, and I see this as a test, to be honest. Over every few years, something pops up, and people start arguing about it, and unfortunately, sometimes divisions happen. I see all these according to God's will and as a test. What do you think, Justin, brother?
Yeah, praise God. It's not only a test for the individual who's bringing up the falsehood, knowingly or unknowingly, but it's also a test for the community as well, right? Naturally, we are averse to controversy, especially with people we're familiar with, right? Forbidding falsehood or forbidding evil is a difficult task, right? It's very often that we see just allowing something to happen to be the easier route, right? Or somebody brings up a falsehood and we just ignore it, or like, and are there times where I myself do it? Yes, 100%, right? Like sometimes I just think to myself, I'm like, oh, it's not even worth the battle. Like this person is just stuck in their way. They're not willing to listen or argue. But like as a community, that's where we have to build ourselves up to that type of level of just acceptance of the objective authority, right? Like once we all recognize the truth, we have to stand firm in it and not allow it to be breached with falsehood. And it's very easy. Like I notice it within myself. Never mind the community. How easy it is to compromise. So yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, brother.
Yeah, I agree with you. Praise God. Anyone else? Any comments regarding this? Amin is asking me to unmute, but I see him deafened. How would that be? Anyways,
He's not server deafened, so maybe he doesn't know. Maybe just let him know that he's deafened.
yeah, I mentioned him because he messaged me. He said, unmute me. Can you unmute me? I said, you're unmuted.
I think that was earlier
Um,
because he asked me as well, and I unmuted him. I think he's just deafened now, unless it was just recently that he messaged you. Because he was server
okay.
muted, and I unmuted him.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't check the time.
So Justin, do you have a example of this so that we can have a better idea? From when I think about compromising my religion, right? I think of it as somebody is trying to give me information and I'm willing to accept it and then actually change my belief system in some way, right? Whether it be a practice that I'm doing in a certain way or like a belief on a certain topic in order to pacify them, right? Or do something that's against what I believe, pacify another person. That's what I think about compromising. I think you're right. We do need to call out falsehood, but where do you draw the line of calling out falsehood and then still being able to discuss it amicably.
Peace.
I
Something.
think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No. Go for it. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Um, I was thinking about kind enlightenment and inviting with kind enlightenment, and I think, and I put this forward humbly, happy to change my mind. But sometimes you have to hear both sides of something. You have to let someone speak their assume that in truth it's wrong. You have to let them speak through it and work it out as well, so that they can then feel open to what you are inviting to. If we don't let any other opinion exist except for opinions that we deem are righteous, I think that may put people off immediately. And so I don't know how wise that is. If the goal also is to invite them to consider that God has a message for them, and it is codified and here for them.
There's definitely a point that you brought up that's valid. Is how many people are willing to bring something forward without trying to understand the alternative view, right? And I often see that in the case. Many people listen to respond, not to actually understand. So if somebody brings up, I don't know, a view that's antithetical to mine, God willing, like I truly try to see how I could be wrong in this scenario, because I have found often that my default is wrong, or my default is self-preservation of the ego. Okay, so how do I go forward in this conversation without trying to prop up my own, right? And like we have this natural tendency to strawman every argument, so that way it doesn't expose our inadequacies. But these are gifts from God, right? We're all here to refine our characters. So if something kind of elicits an emotional response, at that point in time, it's incumbent upon me to be like, okay, well, like, is there something deeper here? Is there something that I naturally am trying to negate away from because it exposes a part of me, right? Now, if that element is not there and it seems abundantly clear, I am a little bit more firm in my stance in that aspect. But if it's something a little bit more open, where I'm like, okay, I can see it either way. A perfect example of this is the prayers, either silently or loudly, right? There was quite a firm stance on that. But I can see either perspective. Now I have my way of doing things, but I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue and say it's the best way possible, because either way has a valid point, right? But if it's something firm like the 5 prayers, as I made an example, right? Like, I'm a little bit more firm in this aspect. Like, there's no way to interpret that other way. I don't know if my rambling made sense. Sorry, guys.
Peace, brother. It did. Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. And God bless you for your insight. That's the beautiful thing with this community. We all see the truth from varying definitions, and if we have these important discussions, it really it broadens our perspective. It allows us to see the truth with a higher definition, as it were. By God's
Peace, everyone. Can I read a couple of verses in reference to this good subject, mashallah? It's chapter 16, 125 and 126. You know it, mashallah, but I just want to refresh it. It says, the subtitle says, How to Spread God's Message. The verse reads, You shall invite to the path of your Lord with wisdom and kind enlightenment, and debate with them in the best possible manner. Your Lord knows best who is straight off from his path, and he knows best who are the guided ones. And the next verse says, And if you punish, you shall inflict an equivalent punishment. But if you resort to patience instead of revenge, it would be better for the patient ones. You shall resort to patience, and your patience is attainable only with God's help, do not grieve over them and do not be annoyed by their schemes. Thank you.
Yeah, praise God. Yeah, a big thing to note is common theme with these like this verse that even Brother Teslim pointed out is emotion is often a symptom of the ego, right? If we're overjoyed, it's because we're attributing something that happened. Like don't get me wrong, happiness or contentment. This is something that is bestowed upon us by God, 100%. But if we have these deep moments of dread or fear or anything like that, but that is the ego trying to attribute power other than God, right? We often inverse what is like as God tells us anything good comes from God, anything bad comes from us. We often inverse that with our ego. That's why we're sad because anything bad we're like, oh, why would something other than anything in our control do this? Where it's a lack of appreciation or our lack of reaction, like our bad reaction, our inverse reaction is what making the problem difficult. And when we're arguing with people, if we do it in the best possible response, this means that we have to be cognizant of our ego and cognizant of our inadequacies and be open to the fact to lower our wing to the other individual, right? Like Brother Teslim brought up a very beautiful verse that touches upon that. I don't know if that makes sense. Makes sense in my head. Sorry for God willing, I'll be a little less verbose in my understanding here.
Peace, brother. That wasn't verbose. Not in the bad sense. I thought that was eloquent. And yeah, God bless you. I appreciate you sharing it. I hope you don't shy from sharing it. Last few, you've said some blessed things, in my opinion, by the grace of God, and I hope you don't shy away from saying them because it's sometimes at the end of your statement you say, I don't know if that makes sense. May God bless you. I found them beneficial.
God bless you and thank you for the words of affirmation.
So can someone remind me what was the original question to this discussion was regarding how much tolerance, right, when it comes to interacting with someone that has a completely different, let's just use the word religion, right? Their way of life is different. There could be evil in it. We don't fully know. They're right. You're interacting with them, and how much of it do you forbid, or how do you interact with that? Is that generally the conversation we were having? And then, if so, the conclusions have been there must be tolerance because in order to I'll stop there. Does that track so far? I was trying to see if we could round it back to the crux.
From my understanding, your summarization of the topic is true. I would say it's not so much tolerance that we're advocating, so much as to tolerate, to understand that people, not to tolerate the bad talk or the falsehood. In fact, we have to be extremely firm, but to do it in a way that we acknowledge that us ourselves don't take things easily. Right, especially if it challenges our paradigm or it challenges how we see the world or how we've justified things. Right, so to come with that patience in the reminders, patience in how we explain things, right? To acknowledge the fact that you will get some pushback. People will fight against you, may throw some low blows at you because what you're doing is you're challenging their ego, right? And to do it in the kindest possible way, as Teslim said, right? Now, if they're extremely firm on it, after proof is given to them, like at that point, you have to be firm too, right? I think that would be the delineation. Does anybody disagree with that aspect? Because I think that's what the consensus is. I could be wrong.
Mashallah, well said, all of you. Can I just add a little bit of my understanding from the great wisdom of Quran, mashallah, God's words? I always put this in front of me when I get into this discussion or debate with somebody else, anyone. Who is doing whom a favor, right? Am I doing that individual a favor by reminding them of the verses of Quran or guiding or reciting the verses of God? Or is God doing me the favor to being this opportunity to earn credit represents submission, right? Of course, in the areas where you want to be firm and firm and have a good stance, you can do it, but you can do it in many ways, right? That's the key ingredient to me as how we represent submission, how we are wanting to please God is really the importance for me. Because again, going back to the point, who's doing whom a favor, it's God who's doing me a great favor by putting me in this position to earn credit or to damage what I thought it would be a credit for me. And I think this is important to read all the verses, apply it properly, and have the best representation where you are surrendering and accepting, but not necessarily compromising. You don't want to compromise. You don't want to have, you don't want to listen to words that are not appropriate, or there's somebody, for example, mocking our religion or God. You will not tolerate that. You would change the subject, but you would do it in such a way that it doesn't create hostility, aggression. It creates this wonderful effect of applying it, but not necessarily creating that repelling position. Hopefully, I made some sense out of that. Thanks.
Peace. You know, what came to mind listening to Brother Taslim and everyone else is that, like, whenever by God's leave, I find myself discussing submission with someone, one of the thoughts that God gives me is, it's not my job to convince. I'm not trying to convince a person to accept submission. In the dialogue and back and forth, I referred, say, to the Quran, I referred to other evidence, the proofs, not simply about Quran, about things that God says, I've given you 2 eyes, a tongue, and 2 lips. I've given you a brain. In other words, I, so to speak, assume from the beginning of the conversation that this person, like me, like all of us, has been given common sense, even though some of their statements may be the exact opposite. But let me go back to what I said initially. God knows best. I do not enter a conversation with the purpose of trying to convince somebody that I'm correct and they're wrong. What I try to do, God willing, is present the evidence, the proof, assist the person in, or at least respond in a manner that brings out maybe contradictions or areas they need to question. I find that too often when people engage in conversations, in discourse with others regarding submission, whether they know it or not, they're trying to quote unquote coerce, or it's an attitude where you either accept submission or else. Peace. Thank you.
Praise God. A beautiful point brought up there is providing the evidence. What Brother Douglas is essentially pointing out is like making it an objective situation. Where it's like, okay, let's look at this objectively. What is the evidence on this? And if you do that, like, and both sides do that, the truth will arise, right? You're putting the truth as the centerfold of like the agreement, right? Like, or the understanding, right? And if a person refuses to use evidence or the truth, then you understand their stance. You understand that they're not willing to look for the truth as a belief system. They're looking for something that accommodates themselves. I think that, and like that itself is very telling. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, brother. God bless you.